Health IQ Podcast, more than just a voice, unveiling the role of dispatchers.
Something happens in your life and you pick up the phone and call 911. Do you know that you're actually talking to an emergency responder? Today, we will be learning about our regional dispatch center and the multiple tasks they handle. Joining me at the table today is Jamie Lueders. Did I get that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. My crew today is Joyce Runyon and Bobby Hockaday, and I am Brenda Bishop. Jamie, thank you for joining us today. I'm so excited about all the things that we're going to be able to talk about and share about your center today. Several months ago, we were visiting about some things, and it just made me think we really needed to have you on this podcast because you were telling me things I had no idea about. And so that's why I'm just glad you came. I am sure people don't realize that you are considered emergency responders. And I actually had a former fire chief tell me years and years ago that the hardest first responder job is dispatching, because you're there from the very beginning to the very end, but you don't ever get to be on scene and see the final outcome of all your effort. But for most you're a voice on a phone. Most of us who just call, and we don't really think about who you are and what you're doing. But for our firefighters, our EMTs, our police officers, you're their lifeline and very important to keeping them safe. So we appreciate all you do.
I appreciate you having me because dispatch is a passion.
I'm glad you came. So first, I'd like you to just tell people about our center and who you dispatch for, because I'm not sure people really realize who all you dispatch for, and then how many people there actually are there.
Okay, so currently we dispatch for all of Clay County, all of Harding County, Conscious Dam for fire and EMS, and we have Amistad Fire Department up in Union County. In Clay County, it's all of the law enforcement, so Logan, Tucumcari, the Clay County Sheriff's Office. The only people we don't dispatch for is state police. We dispatch for all of the EMS, for House EMS, Forest EMS, Tucumcari, San Juan, like I said, Conscious. Up in Harding County, we dispatch our one sheriff, Pedro, and we dispatch for their fire and EMS for Harding County and Rosebud. Roy has their own fire and EMS. And then in Union County, it's just Amistad. We don't get very many calls from there, but there are babies too, so.
But then all the rural fire departments.
Yes, every rural fire department in Clay County, and we seem to have a lot more than others. We have 4 districts. We have a Forest Fire Department, House Fire Department. I'm trying to think. We have, oh my goodness, she's going to be mad at me. We have the ones down by, like, where Jerry Rush is from, down near Grady.
She has Forest, and then there's Jordan.
Yeah, we have Jordan. We even dispatch for a certain area where it's Forest Fire, but it's Grady EMS.
Oh.
So they do come into our county a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And then there'd be like Nervisa area.
So you're remembering this.
Yes.
I'm not the best. We have Porter also. And I do the test pages.
Bard?
Bard, Nervisa, Porter. Trying to think of who else is up there. Logan Fire, of course. Gosh, there's so many.
There's just a lot of, the whole idea is that there is a lot of different agencies or groups that you're dispatching for.
At one time, we had it counted to where there were 33 total, and that's fire, EMS, and law enforcement. Mm-hmm. There may be more now because I know there's been some differences, like with Conscious, we've separated them from Conscious Fire and EMS to Conscious Fire and Conscious EMS. Mm-hmm. So there may be a couple more, but it's definitely over 30.
So that's a lot of different groups that you're trying to keep track of and know the names of all the people, and or at least I guess they have call numbers maybe?
They do. They have call signs. Each department has their own. Some would be just numbers. Tucumcari doesn't really utilize individual call signs. It's more like truck numbers. They have like Squad 51. District 1 has like their personnel numbers be like D111. And then their trucks would always start with like D1 and then 155, just to identify themselves, what department they're with.
So, as you talk about those call signs, that's important because what do you do with all that information?
We have to document everything so that they have that for their reports. But more importantly, we're keeping track of who went where so that we can maintain responder safety. We want all of our responders to go home at the end of the day. And if we don't know who is out there, then we can't keep track of that.
Right. Very, very important job. That's why I said you're the lifeline. So how many dispatchers are there in your center?
So including myself, there's 9. We have people like me that have been there 17 years, and then we have dispatchers that have been there for 4 months. They're still in the training process, obviously, because it's not like you can just come in and pick up the job right away. You have to have training. We involve state training. Mm-hmm. There is a 3-week law enforcement academy that we go to, and they drill us on safety, liability issues, of course, customer service, making sure that we understand why certain fire departments are sent, why law enforcement officers are sent for certain things. It's just a lot of information in 3 weeks. And then when we come back, everybody has to go through more training to make sure they understood and retain that information. And if we cannot get state certified, we can only dispatch for up to a year. So generally, if something happens, a dispatch isn't for everybody, but it is something we do take serious.
Well, it's a very serious job. Well, and there's continuing certificate or trainings, I assume, but along with the state training, I'm sure there's a lot of just local training as to who's who and where's where and
yes.
all that.
We do a lot of training like GIS, which is Geographical Information Systems. It's what controls our maps. We do a lot of training with them. We have ride-alongs so people can get to know local places, because not everybody knows Cedar Break Road as Cedar Break Road. We try to make sure everybody knows where people are going to call in, because our locals do that. And I appreciate it when they call in, because at least if they tell us what it used to be or what it's known as, we have an idea of where to send people. And even though we may not always know that information, our responders do.
So there's a lot of training, and a lot can happen in dispatch. They have a lot of jobs. How many dispatchers are on at a time usually?
So we try to have at least 2 people for every shift, because nobody wants to be sitting there for 10 to 12 hours by themselves the whole shift, and sometimes it gets real busy. So we try to make sure there's at least 2 people in there at a time. It doesn't always work out that way because we're human too, but we do try to force that issue.
Yeah, illnesses or whatever may change that. But it is manned 24/7.
Yes.
And by trained people to sort of run us through whatever the protocol is. So as I know that I can remember when I got hurt years and years ago, there was some frustration on my family's part who was on 911 because they didn't feel things were happening fast enough. So I thought maybe you could talk about the process that goes on, because I'm sure you're still talking to somebody. It doesn't mean that you're not sending help while you're still talking. So
I like to joke that we're going to wait until we're off the phone, but we don't wait until we're off the phone. We get as much information as we can, the main issue going on and the location, and then we page it out immediately. then we still need more information. And a lot of people get frustrated. I understand. I've had to call multiple times in the last 5 years. My mom's house burnt down.
Oh.
And we were calling and we gave them the information. The dispatcher did great. And I'm not just saying that because I worked there, but she did great. She got people on scene within 3 minutes. And it's hard when most fire departments are volunteer. 3 minutes is pretty good. She continued asking more questions, and I know my stepdad was on the phone with them at the time, and he's all, well, I don't know why you have to know who I am. Just send help. and that's frustrating, but we do need that information. That way later on, it's not just because we're nosy. We are nosy because that's our job. But we need to document it for the report. That way, going back later, it's easier to find your report because that is an important part. I mean, I understand it's paperwork. It's not part of the initial emergency, but it helps us get that information so that the report is easier accessed for insurance or later legal implications. But also, if we're on the phone with you asking you questions and something changes, so you think somebody is having a heart attack. So all of a sudden they're still breathing, but they've got their chest pains and they're down, but then all of a sudden they're not responsive. We're able to get that information while you're still on the phone. And keeping you on the phone longer to get the information, even if we can't keep you on the phone until responders get there, it gives us more of a chance to keep everybody updated.
So your responders are then ready when they get there, your emergency people.
And the way I explain it to people is if you were that responder, and we're not trained to go to scenes, we are not. I know some of our dispatchers are, but if you were the responder, what information do you want to go safely into that to help someone? You've got law enforcement calls. If they say somebody just robbed me and you're keeping them on the phone, and then a couple minutes later somebody comes in, if they weren't on the phone, you wouldn't know that someone went back in there. And then the officers would be at risk also. So we try to ask as many questions as we can and keep people on as long as we can.
I could foresee that maybe it would even save time. Say you're having an emergency where an EMS is coming, that it would save them time if they had knew that information had changed and they could leave the ambulance with more equipment or different equipment or things like that.
And that's part of the problem, is that we respond to situations in different ways depending on what that situation is. And if it changes, we need to know what response we're going to have.
So I think another issue that we see, and when we talk to people as we do some of our trainings for Narcan, is often you don't know your address. So what happens when people don't know where they're at? They may be able to, well, I'm at so-and-so's house, but they don't know that address because they may just be a visitor.
Yeah, that gets a little bit hard sometimes. It's always good to know your address. It's always good to leave mail somewhere where it's easily accessible by people who might come in case they call 911. In New Mexico, addresses are supposed to be listed on the outside of the house. I know they're not always, and it's not heavily enforced, but it helps because if you call, I think I'm on the 1400 block, but I'm not sure. You have that address there. The ambulance pulls up to the correct house instead of the one down the road. And we do have addressing in our system to where if you call 911, it should show us exactly where the person's at. Sometimes there are errors because it's technology. Technology is not always 100% as much as we want it to be. So knowing that address and confirming the address is always super important. But 911 will almost always bring up, even if it's a deactivated cell phone, you can still call 911, and it usually does give us an address. Or at least
as long
close.
as you stay on the phone long enough.
Yes, yes. If you call and hang up, chances are we're not going to get any information.
So what are some tips you can give a caller who might be calling knowing that it's stressful to help make the whole thing go a little smoother for them?
know your location. Location is super important. I want to say don't get frustrated at the questions, but I understand people get frustrated at the questions because, again, I've called before and I get frustrated with questions also. Just understand that we have to answer those questions or ask those questions so we can answer them for our responders because it's important. But definitely knowing what's going on and where it's happening. Most important things that you can tell us.
And be calm.
Yes. As calm as possible. I don't want to tell people to be calm because we know what happens when you ask somebody to calm down. It don't usually work. And I also understand that when you're calling 911, it's typically the worst day. It's not the best day. You're not saying, hey, what's up? We do have some people that do call like that. But we understand stress, but it's easier for us to understand over the phone if there's a little bit more calmness.
So we all know that, we see a house fire, we call 911.
Yes.
What are other things that we should be calling 911 for? And what shouldn't we call 911 for and maybe call, is there another number we call? Like, I know we were supposed to call for when we were going to do a controlled burn, but that's not an emergency. So, those kinds of things.
So for controlled burns and instances where somebody's life is not in danger and it's not an emergency, but you still need a response or controlled burn, you need to notify the fire department. We do ask that people call our non-emergency number, and that number is 575-461-2280. And we still answer it, but it's not on the 911 system. So if somebody else is calling 911, it's not interrupting an actual emergency. For a 911, anything where somebody's life is in danger, something is happening in that moment, a robbery, something that's current. I don't even know how to describe that because I'm trying to think of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And a car accident that's still in the middle of the road, those would be reasons to call 911. For fireworks and stuff that happened, fireworks is kind of iffy because we know it gets dry. If it's not causing sparks, I would call the non-emergency number.
What about, I know we have an animal population problem. That's not really always the life-threatening emergency. So should they call the...
No, but I do understand that dogs get aggressive. I have some myself. So if the dog's aggressive and coming at you or at a child or another person, I feel like that is definitely 911 worthy. If the dog is just running around loose, you should call the non-emergency number and give that information. That way we can get someone over there.
Yeah. So that's the difference, is that life-threatening. And I think that's an important thing for people to realize. But I do know the other issue is it's really hard to find that number, the non-emergency number.
It can be.
So, in today's world, we don't have phone books. And I know that you have a Facebook page and it's on there, but even sometimes I struggle to find the Facebook page because it's a really long name.
It is.
And then sometimes when you Google it, it doesn't come up. And so it's important maybe if we put that number on our refrigerator or something, so we have that.
And we're going to work with some information to pass out to citizens, and hopefully we can do that and start getting magnets and stuff, because I know phone books really aren't popular. I got called the other day and asked if we had one in dispatch because our system was down. And we have all our numbers in our system. So it was a little bit hard because Googling does not always work. But we do try to put it out over Facebook. We try to keep information out by Nixle. We've been reaching out at fairs and stuff. We try to do handouts with our non-emergency numbers on there. And currently we are inside the police department. So if you call the good old fashioned 461-2160, it will come to us also.
Okay. So I remember that number from years ago.
Just don't mix it up with the WIC number.
Yes. So you mentioned Nixle, and maybe you could tell people what Nixle is. I know that you're not really responsible for signing everybody up, but it's an important thing that everybody can sign up for. And tell us about Nixle.
Okay, so you can sign up for Nixle by either texting 888-777 and your area code, or zip code. And you can log in by going to nixle.com, and it'll give you all the information to log in. You can get notifications by text message or by email. But there's even an app some people use, and it comes up with those notifications also. Typically, we don't send a lot of messages out there because we don't want to overdo it. The National Weather Service does send out notifications for weather when there is crazy weather going through. We all know New Mexico, we had that hailstorm last year was awful. We do have it set up now. I know when we initially did it, people had problems because we were getting the wind alerts every day at like 2 a.m. We do have that changed to where that does not go through. I mean, it may go through your email, and then later on in the day, it'll come through text message. Nobody wants text messages at 2 a.m.
No.
So we did have that fixed. I know a lot of people stopped signing up for it because of that. But we also do send out alerts when there's other issues going on. We've sent out alerts when they shut down 40 because there was police activity out there. We sent out alert when there was an animal attack. We do try to keep people notified because information is important, and sharing that information makes things go smoother.
Right. So Nixle is an important thing. I do have it downloaded or signed up for myself. And if you can't remember all that, you can go to the emergency managers page on the Quay County website, and there's a link there as well. And it can go for any kind of emergency that we have. And you guys actually do dispatch some of those emergencies out.
Yes, we do.
So we have just a few more minutes, but I wanted you to talk about maybe a few of the other things you do at dispatch other than just answering that 911 call, because there are so many other things that you do.
Yes, we used to joke with a former fire chief that we just push buttons and answer phones, but dispatch is so much more, and he knows that. We are keeping contact with our first responders. We're making sure that they are safe. On top of that, we're answering non-emergency calls. We also do all kinds of paperwork, and paperwork is not the fun part unless you like that kind of stuff. We do all of the entries into NCIC, which is the National Crime Information Center. So stolen vehicles, missing persons, stolen TVs, all that kind of stuff. We enter that into the system so that everybody in the country can know. And that is a nationwide thing, all 50 states, and Guam. So that takes a lot of our time. And then I'm not sure what else you guys want to know that we do.
I'm sure that you keep track of all the police officers and what they're up to and their traffic stops and
all the time traffic stops.
Yes. So all that kind of stuff takes time and paperwork.
And there's not a lot of just sitting there waiting for it to happen, because they go out and make it happen for us.
Mm-hmm. So if somebody was interested in becoming a dispatcher, how could they find out more about it to see if that's what they might want to do?
So we offer sit-ins because we understand that dispatch is not for everybody. And a lot of people, like myself, did not know what it was going into it. So the sit-in offers about an hour where you can go sit and see what we do. And you don't have to be applying for the job to do it. You just have to fill out some forms, and then we'll schedule it. You can watch us answer those phones, get the radio, our paperwork that we do. You'll basically see all of it.
Well, and one thing I didn't mention, but I am sure with 30 some agencies you're dispatching for, that you're probably handling stuff for more than one agency at a time,
Yes.
and maybe possibly more than one emergency at a time.
And a
So-
lot of people don't realize that. They also don't realize that just because we're in the police department doesn't mean that we're Tucumcari Police Department employees. We actually are county employees.
Right. And you will be moving soon.
We will. We'll be moving over to the old Bob's Pharmacy building. And we plan to have that completed hopefully in July 2025.
So that'll be an exciting move for you all.
It will be.
So I guess my last question is, can you tell us maybe what the most rewarding part of your job is for you?
Oh, my favorite part is the end of the call when everybody goes home. I love helping people. So sending the ambulance and finding out that they were able to keep somebody safe and healthy and get them where they needed to be so they could stay that way, that's my favorite part.
Wonderful. So we like to end our podcast with some food for thought, and we chose first responders don't just show up, they show up with their hearts. And I can see that in you. You shared a lot today, even before we started filming, about how much you love your job, but it does take a special person to be a dispatcher, and you have to have a lot of heart and caring for people.
I do think so.
So if there's anything you want to add to that I might have missed?
I can't think of anything to add. We do plan on moving. We plan on keeping this move to where everybody will still have the same 911 services that we've always provided. So I'm looking forward to continuing serving Quake County and Harding.
So we do want to thank you for coming and sharing. So we have a gift for you.
Thank you.
This has been very eye-opening. Even before we started the filming part, when we were just visiting, I was like, I didn't know that. So before you leave, though, can you please share the name of your Facebook page? Because you do put out a lot of information there, if you can remember it. Or maybe it's actually the name of your center.
It is. It is the Tucumcari Quay Regional Emergency Communications Center. And I did not pick that long name, but I'm pretty proud of it.
So Tucumcari Quay Regional Communications Center. And if you type that in, you'll find all kinds of great information. And thank you all for joining us today. And remember, these first responders are trying to help you during your next emergency. So be kind and courteous. And please come back as we discuss another important health topic.
Special thanks to our guest contributor this episode, Jamie Luaders. Our host was Brenda Bishop. Health IQ podcast crew. Our director was Robert F. Hockaday. Our producers are Robert F. Hockaday and Joyce Runyon. Our camera operator, Robert F. Hockaday. Our second camera assistant, Joyce Runyon. This episode was edited by Robert F. Hockaday. Credit music was provided by David Morris. Funding for Health IQ provided by a New Mexico Better Together grant. Brought to you by the Quay County Health Council. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at Quay County Health. If you have any content ideas, reach out to us by email, healthikupodcast@gmail.com. More info about this topic and more available on our Health IQ blog, QCHEALTHCO.uncil.org.
This podcast was created solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for advice from a healthcare or mental health professional.